Hi, Janeites, and welcome to episode 15 of the What the Austen podcast. I'm excited to be joined again by Anne from Paper Hearts Library and Disney Princess Lessons. Anne was on in November. We did an episode where we compared Disney princesses to Austen heroines. So welcome back, Anne. It's great to have you with me again.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm so excited to chat with you again. I had so much fun last time. And thanks to everyone who listened.
Yeah, so that was actually one of the most popular episodes of last year. So we thought we'd come back and we'd cover the villains instead. So we did make some honorary mentions in the Disney Princess episode, but we're going to get into it in a little bit more detail today. So this is actually marking a change in the way that I'm going to bring you guys new episodes. So up until this point, the podcast has been monthly. I've released a new episode each month. But I'm going to change the format slightly. One, because there's quite a big demand for more content, but also some of my episodes are, over an hour long. And I know in terms of like day-to-day life, that doesn't always fit in. So, I'm trying to make the episodes now a little bit more digestible in the sense that you could listen to them on a dog walk or on your commute. So there'll still be the longer episodes coming out. So if you're like me and want to lose yourself for a good hour and a bit on a podcast, then that content will still be available, and content like that will be released as we go along. But I'm trying to find a happy balance. So this episode in particular, there was so much content that we have. So we've decided to split it into installments. So basically we'll have one come out this month. There'll be another episode this month as well, which won't be on the Disney stuff because I've got a special bonus episode coming out, but there will be another 2 episodes in August, which will cover Sense Sensibility and Mansfield Park. And then there'll be more episodes coming out as we go along, which will cover Emma, Persuasion, and Northanger Abbey. So loads of content to come from this, and I'm really excited to start releasing more episodes a month. And I really hope that you like this new format that I'm moving to. I was going to wait till January, but I've decided to kind of move it ahead just because of this particular topic and how much we have to say about it. So yeah, we really hope that you're going to enjoy this series. So I was wondering before we start, Anne, do you have a favorite Disney villain?
I feel like my favorite Disney villains very much connect to the villains that I have met in the Disney parks. I definitely am not one of the people who really gets into villains and loves them. I know a lot of people really get into them, but because they are villains, I'm always rooting for the heroine to win in the princess movies, especially. So my favorites kind of have come about because of those interactions in the parks. And I would say that as much as I find Gaston completely annoying in the movie, I really do enjoy him in the parks. He's fun to tease about books, and he is kind of hilarious. So I would say he's my favorite. And also Cinderella's stepsisters. I do like them in the movies because they're so ridiculous and hilarious, and they're a lot of fun to meet in the parks. If you're ever in the Disney parks, they will very much entertain you.
That's amazing. I love that. I think the stepsisters are really cool because they are kind of redeemed in later films as well. I enjoy the 2 and 3 of the Cinderella series. I think they're really good. So as always, guys, if you listen to my episodes, I tend to start with Pride and Prejudice. So the first character that I've got on the list is Gaston. And that's to go against Wickham. So this is a comparison that we did make in our Disney Princess episode. And I think it was actually this character that sparked my kind of interest in doing this villain episode. So I'll just kind of go off of some of the comments that I made in the last episode, but then also a few new ones that I had. Gaston basically is the main antagonist in Beauty and the Beast. If you do need a reminder, he wants to marry Belle, but she's not interested because Gaston's he's basically a self-centered narcissist, and that's not Belle's type. So
really?
Yeah, surprise,
hard to believe.
I know. But he's got so many similarities to Wickham, even just in appearance. They both have this kind of, Wickham's obviously in the militia, and they have this military type attire. Both of them wear red, which is really interesting because I knew that Beauty and the Beast is set in France, and I swear the French uniform at the time would have been blue, but Gaston's in red. Is that because he's meant to be maybe like linked more to like a British military background?
I just read a really interesting book called Celebrating Disney Princesses, I want to say. I can't remember the exact title of it, but for the Boo to You readathon that I co-hosted in October. And they really it had a lot of background on the stories, and they really seemed to focus on the French history a little bit. Like they had interviews with animators and stuff like that. But I also got this feeling that none of the animators were particularly historical. I mean, you can watch any Disney movie and see that. So it wouldn't surprise me if they just thought of red as like an angry color or like a villain type of color. They didn't really go on with Gaston, but I feel like they just kind of mix up a lot of things or put a little bit of British history into almost any fairy tale. Americans love to do that. We just love to just be like, oh, this person's from like another made up country or another, somewhere in Europe. Let's give them a British accent or let's give them some British characteristic. We're terrible about it.
I love that. That's actually so funny. That's fair enough then, but definitely their outfits in themselves do look very similar. It's good to do like maybe a comparison. If you look at the images online, that's what I did when I was looking at it. And even in like appearances in terms of like they have dark hair and a lot of their like the actual exterior of them is very similar. But then also there's a lot of similarities between their personalities. So really flirtatious, charming on the outside, this idea that women should want to be with them regardless. They're both really well-spoken and I think charismatic, which is definitely important as what lures people in. And they're both pretty popular people within their towns. It's also interesting that they're both most of their stories are set in little towns. We were saying this in the Disney Princess episode that the towns actually look quite similar when you start comparing them as well.
They really do.
Yeah, absolutely. And then my last thought on it is that Gaston's able to manipulate the villagers into going after the beast. And I thought that's really similar to the way that Wickham influences the perception of Darcy in Meryton. So they've got this they're really good at manipulating and convincing people of their thoughts. I mean, you see it so quickly with Elizabeth. She absolutely buys into Wickham's story. And then Wickham starts to tell other people. I think he tries it out with Elizabeth. How does this settle with her? And then he starts to tell other people and everyone feels sorry for him. And I think Gaston definitely has that same power to draw people to his cause.
Yeah, definitely. And that's interesting, circling back even to our princess discussion, that I don't know if we mentioned this or not, but it's interesting that Belle absolutely does not fall for it, but Elizabeth does. That's one thing that they have that's a little bit different.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so true. Did you have Gaston and Wickham as a comparison?
I absolutely did. Yeah, it's so perfect. Pretty much my thoughts are almost exactly the same as yours. I thought that he was obsessed with superficial things and everyone in town swoons over him. I think Wickham is definitely obsessed with superficial things and wanting money in a quick and easy way as possible. And it's not so much that Gaston is wanting money, but he wants Belle in a quick and easy way. Like he just thinks that he can kind of he's entitled. I had the exact same thought about how Wickham wants revenge on Darcy in the same way that Gaston wants revenge on the beast, and he tries to make Darcy out to be a beast. So yeah, you pretty much covered everything I thought. So great minds think alike on that one.
Yeah, absolutely. They're definitely one of the best matches, I think, out of all of the research that I did. That one, I was like, wow, it's an easy match to make. I'm just like, oh, they're so similar.
Did you have someone else for Gaston? I mean, not for Gaston, for Wickham. They're so similar.
They're so similar. They're the same person. I do. I actually have two more. So my second one is Dr. Facilia. Have I said that right?
Good. I think so. Yeah, I think so.
Okay. So Dr. Facilia is a voodoo doctor in The Princess and the Frog. That's actually my favorite Disney film, by the way. I really like him as a villain. And I think he's really complicated. So I think he's quite a good one. But my comparison to him and Wickham is that a little bit more than Gaston, Dr. Facilia is really calculated, really deceitful. They both appear to be friendly and wanting to help at the start, which is a little bit like Wickham as well. It comes across friendly. You don't really see that darker side of him until it's exposed. They both have this card comparison. So like Dr. Facilia, he's always using these like tarot cards or just general cards that he used for his voodoo. Wickham's said to be a gambler. So I made that comparison. and they're both driven by money. So Wickham's constantly on the hunt for rich women he can marry, and Dr. Facilia is actually wants all of the riches in the town. He's got his entire plan is getting the money from Big Daddy. I don't know what Big Daddy's actual name is, but he's called basically by a lot of the characters Big Daddy in the show. And he's got a lot of money, and Dr. Facilia wants that, and he also wants to take over the entire the whole of New Orleans. So he's got big plans. One of my more detailed comparisons between him and Wickham is that Dr. Facilia calls on his friends on the other side. And I think we kind of gathered the kind of some sort of spirit creature things that come up and they help him. But I thought that idea of friends on the other side that support him, I kind of made the link between Wickham going to Darcy for funds. And that sense of the other side, a lot of people think of people who are richer than them. It's like, or what's life like on the other side, or that kind of thing. So I thought maybe a link between them would be that they have to look for finances and resources from somebody in a completely different situation to them. So I thought that was maybe a tie between the two.
Yeah, I really like that. I didn't think of that comparison with that villain at all. So I love that. That's great.
Oh, amazing. That makes me happy when we I love it when we can, like, you tell me something or I tell you something, I'm like, wow, that's actually,
I know,
giving me new ideas.
I know, it completely. And I love the card connection there. That is so good. I didn't think of that at all. And he is such a gambler. Oh, I love it. That's a good one.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And then one last thing that I was going to say about Dr. Facilia is his plan ends up failing because he thinks that Tiana will be easy to buy off. He thinks he'll just be able to offer her what she wants with her restaurants and everything, and she'll go away. And I think that's very much like Wickham underestimating Elizabeth. He thinks that even though she knows the truth, he'll be able to worm his way back in, like, oh, we can still be friends and everything. Elizabeth's like, no, this is it's it for me. I'm sorry, I know your true character.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's really good. I like that.
Thanks. Do you want to give me one off your list that you have for Gaston?
Yeah, so I only had two for this.
Not Gaston.
But,
oh my god!
I know. Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh.
I know, they're so similar. Gaston was just the perfect one. But another one that I made a connection with is Captain Hook. It seems a little strange maybe, but they do both wear red. And we get that red. I don't know, Disney loves the red for the villain, I think, or at least for these male villains. But similar to Gaston, I mean, kind of arrogant. But what I really see is that Captain Hook is obsessed with revenge over someone he's very jealous of, and that someone he has wronged him. And while Peter Pan's wrong, for those who need a refresher on Captain Hook and Peter Pan, if I want to say this is right, I hope this is right, but it was something about that somehow Peter Pan cut off Captain Hook's hand, right? And he threw it to the crocodile, and then the crocodile's like after Captain Hook for the rest of his life because he liked the taste of him so well, which just shows how like morbid like the old fairy tales and the old Disney movies are. Like when you watch the old ones, it's like, this is really creepy. But anyway, so that's kind of Hook's backstory, Captain Hook's backstory. And I thought, well, it's that is a little bit more of a true offensive thing to do, even if they were in battle. It's still kind of that similar thing of there's something that happened in the past, a perceived wrong or whatever, that just absolutely obsessed with. And Captain Hook is like obsessed with Peter Pan in the same way that really Wickham is just obsessed with Darcy. I mean, it's like, you almost just want to be like, come on, dude, like move on, And it's just, even though nothing really like happened and he's manipulated and made everything up, it's just like it's like he has this jealousy fixation on Darcy. It was like he was so jealous that Darcy had everything that he wanted that he cannot rest. And that I feel like that's sort of the same with Captain Hook and Peter Pan. He's very jealous of Peter Pan's youth. He's very jealous that everyone likes him. I feel like there's just a lot of it's very much rooted in the jealousy. And also it made me laugh a little bit thinking about how Captain Hook always says, blast that Peter Pan. You can just picture Wickham going around the village saying, blast that Mr. Darcy.
Yeah. Can you imagine? You can just imagine him at home with Lydia just like slamming the doors.
Yes. Blast that Mr. Darcy. Yeah, exactly.
I know. What always gets me about Wickham is Darcy actually does try to support him a lot of the time, and it's just never enough. It's never enough for him. He wants to see him like completely destroyed in a sense. It wasn't enough to try and marry Georgiana for the money. It had to be that extra, I want to get back at Darcy.
And if you think about it, another comparison I have with Captain Hook and Wickham is the way that Captain Hook uses Tinkerbell, who is, has a very close relationship with Peter Pan. And so it's very similar to the way that he sort of manipulates Elizabeth. I know it's not exactly equated, but there's an element, there's an essence there of both manipulating a female character that the male that they're jealous of is close to or cares about.
That's such a good link. And you could also see Tinkerbell as Lydia, and that by capturing her, the hero kind of has to come forward and he has to rectify it to save like the female in that situation. I love the Captain Hook link. I didn't make that comparison myself, but I think there's so many similarities there. That's great.
I love when we can surprise each other and come up with these new angles, like you said.
I know, it's so good. Do you have anything else you want to add about Captain Hook, or should
I don't. That's it. I'm excited to hear your next one.
Okay, so my next one is basically all around the gambling side of Wickham, and I put Oogie Boogie in from The Nightmare Before Christmas. So Oogie lives in like this basement on the outskirts of Halloween Town, and his house is basically like a weird casino, and he's pretty obsessed with gambling. He's a weird guy, and so basically the gambling link was one of the reasons, and the other was I feel like they both have these covers that they hide behind. So Oogie's like in a Hessian bag, and then eventually he's exposed to being just basically built up of bugs. And I thought that's really similar to Wickham, that he's kind of got this cover, this persona of being a little bit more easy on the eyes. But then underneath, he's basically covered in bugs as well. He's not a nice guy.
That is such a great comparison. I love it.
Thanks. So yeah, I thought that was a good kind of extra link that I wanted to bring in. And again, as you were saying about that jealousy and that rivalry, you can definitely see that between Oogie and Jack. There's definitely that rivalry there, and that's similar to the Darcy Wickham rivalry.
Yeah, I love that. That's a good one.
So yeah, do you have any more comparisons to Wickham?
I wish I did. Those are the two that I had. So do you have another one?
I don't. That is all of mine, but you've made some really great ones. And I'm glad that we had some different ones. That's amazing.
Yeah, that's really fun. I love it.
Great. So the next Austen villain on my list is the notorious Caroline Bingley. So do you want to kick things off for her?
Yeah, sure. Well, I put Caroline Bingley and Mrs. Hurst together because to me I just had one because there's just no other comparison. And I think I mentioned this in the other podcast, but they are Anastasia and Drizella, like completely, like, especially if you look at the 1995 Pride and Prejudice, they even give them a similar aesthetic. I was looking at some pictures and there is a scene where Caroline is in that pea green sort of color. One of her dresses is. They wear feathers on top of their head, the way that the stepsisters do when they're going to the ball. I don't think that Mrs. Hurst wears pink, but she does wear like a corally color at some point. They've got the brown hair, the red hair. So just like appearance wise, I know I'm going by the 1995 Pride and Prejudice, which we don't know exactly what they look like in the book, but I just love aesthetically from the movie to movie. I love that. And then I feel like, just their jealousy, their pettiness, their childishness, the way that they have to laugh about Elizabeth's fine eyes, and just everything that they do is so forced and awkward. I'm always so secondhand embarrassed for Caroline, the way she tries so hard, especially in the book. Like, I feel like in some ways it can be worse in the books than it is in the movies. But just the way she's like trying to read his letters and like over his shoulder and saying, is Georgiana as tall as I am? And, oh, Georgiana, I love her. It's just trying so hard. And that's exactly what the stepsisters do. And while they are actually talented at singing and playing music, unlike the stepsisters, there's still a show-offiness because the stepsisters have no idea that they're untalented. I guess you could compare them to to Mary Bennett there, but still there's a show offiness, and the fact that they do both play piano, Mrs. Hurst and Caroline and the stepsisters, even though obviously the Bingleys are more talented. That's a comparison. I'm trying to think if I had anything else with them, but I feel like they probably fit the Disney Austen villain comparison just like so well. And they're just so jealous of Elizabeth, like every little thing, and it's so obvious. It's exactly the same way, and they want to as the stepsisters with Cinderella, and the way that they treat her like a maid is the same way that they want to treat Elizabeth, even though they can't treat her like a maid. They definitely treat her when she's a house guest as if she is kind of unwanted and lower class. And oh, I can't believe her hem is what is it, her hem or her petticoat, something is 6 inches deep in mud. So it's very similar to the way that stepsisters ridicule Cinderella. Like, they're so jealous of her dress when going to the ball that they rip it apart. And so it's a metaphorical ripping apart of the way Elizabeth dresses and the way that she does things.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a quote as well from Caroline Bingley that says, this is referring to Elizabeth, "It seems to me to show an abominable sort of conceited independence, a most country town indifference to decorum." It's just, like you said, it's just like looking down on her, and they have to make these snide comments all the time. And you think they're in such a better situation than Elizabeth, just because of their status, that it's, why do they take such time? And it is that jealousy, it's that threat. They're so threatened by Elizabeth, and that is so similar to the sisters. You're right.
And I'm not sure, and I'd have to look this up, I don't know that Lady Tremaine, was she nobility? I don't know if she married into nobility with Cinderella's father, or if she was already like whatever her title was for Lady Tremaine. I'm not sure, but it still feels like there's a colorful phrase my grandmother used to say, of trying to make a silk purse out of a sow's ear. And so basically that's kind of like with the stepsisters. You feel as if they think of themselves as silk purses, but they are quite pig's ears. And so
that's amazing.
I mean, if you think about it, it's a little bit like Caroline and Mrs. Hurst, because they look down on Elizabeth, but their money comes from trade. They go back to, they're just tradespeople, and they're not really anything that special, and they've just forced their way into society. And so there's just this kind of feeling that, and I don't know if it's true, but there was always this feeling to me when I watched Cinderella, and especially when you watch Cinderella 2015, the live action version, you get this feeling that Cinderella has more class, emotionally speaking, or manners than the stepsisters. And it's sort of the same thing with Elizabeth. Like, she doesn't have to try very hard to be classy in a sort of the way that she presents herself, I guess, sort of way.
That's such a good point. There's like a natural elegance to them that the stepsisters and the Bingley sisters, no matter how hard they try, they just won't have. And their jealousy makes it worse, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
That's amazing. I 100% have them on my list. It's such a good comparison for all the same reasons that you had. I don't have anything else to add on that. It's such a good link. Do you have anything else you want to add on that one, or do you want me to say one of mine?
Yeah, I'd love to hear one of yours.
Okay, so for Caroline, I actually put the evil queen.
That's good.
So the evil queen from Snow White, she's motivated by being the fairest of them all after discovering from the mirror that Snow White is in fact the fairest of them all. And this sends her into a jealous mission where she's determined to get rid of Snow White so that she can take that place. Basically it's because of that jealousy, that same jealousy is why I've compared the two. And from the outside, the queen is very calm and regal and sophisticated. And I think Caroline does a good job of putting on a kind of even I think she goes too far with it and it's almost like caricature, but she comes across as she's like, I'm very poised, I'm, this woman in society, blah, blah, blah. But then inside she's very hateful and cold and jealous of Elizabeth. And I think it's like a ruthless jealousy as well, because if you look how far Caroline goes to remove Bingley and Darcy from the situation, where she sends the letter to Jane, basically trying to tell Jane that Bingley's not interested in whatsoever, and he's more interested in Georgiana Darcy, all for her own means, because she wants to marry Darcy. I think that there's definitely a ruthlessness there to her, which is very similar to the Evil Queen, the lengths that she'll go to get rid of Snow White. And that I thought that was quite a strong link between the two.
Yeah, I like that. That's really good. I thought of another one that I thought, well, do you have any more thoughts that you want to add to that before I say anything else? I don't want to interrupt.
No, absolutely not. That was everything I wanted to say on the Evil Queen.
That actually made me think, because I didn't have it on my list, but it actually sparked for me how I could see a little bit of Maleficent for Caroline, because it's the same sort of jealousy and the same sort of a little bit regal, I'm better than everyone, calmness, calculated cruelty. But so the thing that I thought of, it's kind of a stretch, but I thought of this comparison. So Maleficent is motivated by jealousy to put a curse on Sleeping Beauty, put her in the sleeping curse. Well, I think she actually says she'll prick her finger on the spindle of a spinning wheel and die. And the fairies put a spell on Sleeping Beauty so that the curse won't be death, but sleep. And but the comparison that I'm seeing is Jane Bennet is such a sweet, kind, tame person, kind of like Sleeping Beauty. And Caroline effectively puts her in a metaphorical sleeping curse by kind of cutting everything off between Jane and her brother. So I could see a little bit of that comparison, and just the way that she steals away, Maleficent steals away Prince Philip, who Sleeping Beauty is in love with. It's sort of like keeping Bingley captive away from Jane. So
I love that. That's amazing. No, that's such a good link.
Yeah, I thought that wasn't very eloquent, but I just thought of it off the top of my head when you said the Evil Queen. I was like, oh, Maleficent kind of has similar qualities too. So
no, that's amazing. I love that. That's a great one. I think that was all of my thoughts on Caroline Bingley. Did you have any others that you wanted to add?
No, that was it.
The next person on my list for Pride and Prejudice is Mr. Collins. I know people feel like backwards and forwards whether or not he's a villain. I know Kaylee, who I have on the pod quite often, from Half Agony, Half Hope, she's adamant that he's a villain. She feels very strongly about it. I agree that he's a villain, and I'll say more about this later, but I feel like he kind of has like villain sidekick vibes, like Lady Catherine villain sidekick vibes. I love that. Oh my gosh, I'm excited to hear yours in a second, because that's such a good idea. I've got one comparison for Collins, so I'll tell you which mine is. Okay. So my comparison was the Duke of Wesselton from Frozen, or Weaseltown, as people seem to joke to him all the time. So basically he turns up to Arendelle because he wants a trade deal with them. And when that doesn't really work out too much, he turns quite sinister when Elsa gets frightened and starts freezing things. And I thought he was very similar to Collins when you actually watch the film. When he turns up at the start, he actually says, this is the Duke, he says, "Open those gates so I may expose your secrets and unlock your riches." And then he goes, "Oh, did I say that out loud?" And I thought that's so Collins, even though Collins doesn't have the ability to check himself. It's that unfilteredness where they just say things that's just totally unacceptable. Yes. Obviously, Collins's comments on Lydia when she runs away, and that he constantly goes on about the fact that he's going to inherit the estate, and he's just like totally unchecked. And I thought that's so similar between the two of them. And also, you have to rewatch Frozen to really see this, but I think in his introduction to Elsa and Anna, it's in a ball, and he goes up to them and basically wants to dance with Elsa, and he does this like crazy dance to try and entice her in. And then Elsa's like, oh no, I don't dance, but you could dance with Anna instead. And then Anna's like, oh no, I don't want to dance with him. But their dance scene together is very Collins Elizabeth. It's awkward. He does this, he does like this chicken move. He's just, it's so funny. But I thought that's so similar to the Collins Elizabeth dance. So yeah, you have to rewatch Frozen so, to really appreciate.
Oh my gosh, I did not think of that one, but as soon as you said it, that dance started playing in my mind, and I really want someone to make a fan edit where they've got Collins dancing on one side of the screen and the Duke of Wesselton dancing on the other side. And it's almost like you're so right, it's almost like Elizabeth and Jane, because it's like Jane isn't available, so go down to the younger sister Elizabeth. This is so good. I love this is so fun.
Exactly. It was like, I was like, oh my gosh, that's so like the whole Jane situation where he kind of goes to Mrs. Bennet. He's like, I want to be with Jane. And she's like, oh, she's not available anymore, but go for Elizabeth. I was like, it's so similar to in Frozen when he pops up and does that. So that was
chef's kiss for that comparison. I did not think of it, and I love it so much.
There we go. That is my Collins villain comparison. But I'd love to hear yours.
Well, I have several, but I felt like each one kind of had an aspect of Collins, but I love the Duke of Wesselton. That is great. So I'll kind of just go through the ones that I have and kind of the aspects that I think that they have. So my first one was Smee, who is a sidekick to Captain Hook. And if you don't remember the movie, he's kind of short and he's kind of bumbling and he's kind of silly, just like Collins, and he's a real kiss up. And I thought he was kind of a sycophant in the way that Collins is to Lady Catherine, and he's just always trying to, I don't know, he's kissing up to him. That's just the best way to describe it. He's always kissing up to him, but he's really awkward and nervous, and he's doing things that he thinks are, that are wrong, and he's kind of panicking over things. Like, I feel like Collins is really hyper, and you see it, especially, I'm going more from the movie than anything. I can't remember how much this is in the book, but in the 1995 movie, one of my favorite scenes is when Lady Catherine is coming and he just gets really hyper, and he was just like, my dear, make haste, Lady Catherine is here. And that's sort of the way that Smee is about Captain Hook. Like, he's always he's sort of his second in command, and he's always trying to tell the other pirates what to do on the ship, and kind of like, making sure that Captain Hook isn't upset, because he knows that Captain Hook has this temper. And there's a scene where he is shaving Captain Hook, but when he looks away, I don't know if you remember the scene, but a seagull ends up settling on Captain Hook's head. It's like he's wrapped his head in a towel, and the seagull ends up settling on his head, and he starts shaving the seagulls behind. And then the seagull flies away, like freaks out and flies away when Smee isn't paying attention. And then he thinks he's cut off the captain's head. And it's just the way he panics about that just reminded me of the same way that Collins is always panicked about, like, oh, Lady Catherine. So that was a part of him that I thought connected.
I love that. That is so true. When you were talking about it in the way that he does fret about everything, I was like, that is so similar to Collins. Yeah, absolutely.
And then I had another sidekick that I thought reminded me of Mr. Collins, which is Lefou. Because it's kind of the same reason as Smee. He's a kiss up, and I should say that if you don't remember Lefou is Gaston's sidekick in Beauty and the Beast, and he just thinks Gaston is the greatest in the same way that Mr. Collins thinks Lady Catherine is the greatest, and he's always kind of like pumping Gaston up, like when he's feeling low, which is exactly what Lady Catherine does. And you kind of get this feeling that maybe Lefou even comes up with things, ahead of time, that he's just kind of got in his bag, that, he can say all of these like little niceties to Gaston, in the same way that Mr. Collins, likes to make up have little things ahead of time to say to her. And okay, this is kind of a weird one, but in the live action Beauty and the Beast, they played with this more, where they made Lefou almost like he was kind of in love with Gaston. And I feel like Mr. Collins is kind of a little bit in love with Lady Catherine, like in a weird way. Not like he would really marry her, but just that like he's that level of obsessed with her. And then also I love like thinking about like the Disney scenes and putting Austen characters into those scenes. Can you imagine like the tavern scene when Lefou is singing, no one fights like Gaston, no one's neck is as incredibly thick as Gaston. Can you imagine like Mr. Collins saying, no one has a chimney piece at Rosings as great as Lady Catherine, and like singing a whole song about her? We're talking about like no one would be a true proficient at piano if she really practiced like Lady Catherine. So
I want that to be
that.
a song. Oh my gosh, please, somebody make that.
Yeah, someone please make a parody mashup. I would love that.
That's amazing. No, that's such a good link. Yeah, 100%. I agree.
I actually had two more, but I have quick things to say about those. So I had Frollo from the Hunchback of Notre Dame, who was kind of the evil priest. He, I think, kills Quasimodo's mother as an abomination or something. And he's really cruel. And so Collins really isn't cruel, but just the fact that they were both members of the clergy. And I thought that they both really, in completely different ways, try to justify themselves as being pious and morally above others. Frollo in a very evil way, and Collins in a very pompous, silly way, but they still think that they're morally better than other people. And then I'll just go ahead for the last one because it's just a short comment on this, but I thought of Lucifer the cat from Cinderella. He is Lady Tremaine's cat, and he's just kind of a little smug little bully, but it just made me think of how he's a smug little pet of Lady Tremaine, and Mr. Collins is kind of the smug little pet of Lady Catherine.
I love that. No, both of those. The what's the guy called in
Frollo?
Frollo, yeah.
Frollo?
The Frollo link is really good actually, with the fact that they're both priests. I 100% agree. And also the Lucifer thing, I can totally get that. He's definitely like Lady Catherine's pet, that's for sure. No, that's great. That's amazing. Okay, I'm happy to move on to the last villain that I've got for Pride and Prejudice, and that is Lady Catherine herself. So I really struggled with this one actually. I only actually have, I have a couple, but none of them are like substantial. So the first one that I put for Lady Catherine was Lotso Hugging Bear from Toy Story.
Oh, I like that. That's interesting.
Yeah, just because he's like this older character, and he's pretty much a dictator in the nursery. So I thought that's very similar to Lady Catherine. She's a bit of a dictator. So yeah, a bit of a short comparison, but I kind of found links there. Another one that I had was Maleficent, the fact that Lady Catherine actually holds a lot of power, and she's upset if she isn't involved in minor things. So obviously Maleficent isn't invited to the party, and that really upsets her, and then Lady Catherine's upset if she's not involved in conversations or she doesn't know what's going on with people. So I thought that was quite
I like that
similar. Too. But yeah, they're the only ones that I had for Lady Catherine. I did struggle with it a little bit. Well, who did you have for Lady Catherine?
She was a tough one. I struggled with it a little bit too, but I was kind of looking through. We talked about this earlier. We both had a Disney villains list, and we're kind of going back and forth between our list for Austen and the Disney villains, and kind of trying to figure out these comparisons. And so my first initial impulse was Lady Tremaine, especially with that like Lucifer the cat comparison, and how she pushes her daughter on Darcy and feels very entitled to Darcy for her daughter, in the same way that Lady Tremaine feels entitled to the prince for her daughters. And so I feel like that was my first impulse, but I found one that I really liked, and see what you think of this, but it's a little bit interesting. But the Queen of Hearts from Alice in Wonderland. I felt like, well, I should explain the Queen of Hearts if you haven't seen Alice in Wonderland for a while. She is a very bossy tyrant queen who basically wants to chop everyone's heads off if they irritate her. And so I kind of feel like that's how Lady Catherine is. She's impatient, she's bossy, she acts like a brat, even though she's way too old for her behavior, which is exactly what the Queen of Hearts does. She's very bratty. has to have her way or off with their heads. She's moderately nice to Elizabeth at first, in the same way that the Queen of Hearts, when she first meets Alice, she invites her to play croquet, and she's moderately nice to her. But once she suspects, I think it's where she suspects that Alice has helped the playing cards paint the roses red. It's been a while since I watched Alice in Wonderland. I can't remember what the final straw is that makes her mad at Alice, but she puts Alice on trial, and she just turns against her completely. And I thought, well, that's exactly what Lady Catherine does to Elizabeth when she shows up at Longbourn, and she kind of puts her on trial in that same way, and she's ready to chop off her head, metaphorically speaking.
No, that's so true. Yeah, I think she thinks that it was Alice that trips her up during the game, and then she hits her head, and then she like goes flipping crazy about it.
Yes, that's what it is. You're right. I couldn't remember. I need to rewatch it.
No, absolutely. But she like, the initial thing that makes her angry is about the roses being painted, and she thinks that Alice has done that. So that's so true. It's like that. It's like the build-up of anger, and there's one thing that makes her snap, and then that is like Lady Catherine rocking up to Elizabeth's house, ready to give her a bit of a lecture.
And they're both kind of queens of their own domain,
So true. Oh my gosh, and another link now that you said that is the Queen of Hearts has her husband, and he's like that tiny person that follows her around. That's so like Collins.
That is. Oh my gosh, that's so great. I love it.
So funny. Oh no, that's so great. Do you have any others for Lady Catherine?
That's it. Yeah.
Amazing. No, I love that. I think that's everyone for Pride and Prejudice. Did you have any other thoughts on that book and the villains?
Not too much. I think we already covered it in the Princess podcast, where we talked a lot about just the similarities to Beauty and the Beast. I think that's still the biggest comparison movie if we wanted to go movie to movie.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely agree in so many ways. But yeah, definitely the Disney Princess episode. Like, if you're enjoying this comparison and you haven't listened to that episode, I 100% recommend it. We did it last November. So go back and listen to that one. It's really fun doing these comparisons. So that wraps up the episodes today. We'll be back in August with 2 more installments. So here's a sneak peek of what is yet to come. I think the next book on my list, though, is Mansfield Park.
Thought about Ursula before she turns into Vanessa.
And it's that entitlement. She thinks that she's superior to Cinderella, and so does Mrs. Norris.
Like, a little bit shocked that he was as bad as he was.
Making people feel loved. And then he's also very good at turning that into somebody else.
And I found a very kind of obscure villain, the Ringmaster from Dumbo.
Love that. That's amazing. Such a good one. That's great.
Thank you.
Head over to my Instagram at @WhatTheAusten for all the updates, and for all of Anne's info that will be in the bio. So go ahead and check all of her content out. Her YouTube stuff is great, and also on Instagram as well. So I will see you in the next episode.